Good evening. This is the evening news. Who is the main political force who can control the situation? This is the question of the day and the week. Today, the Russian president met with representatives of parliamentary factions. However, politicians are having more trouble keeping the situation under control. Today, Armenian units, using the weapons of the 366th Motor Rifle Company, attacked the city of Khajali. Shusha is preparing for defense. In the news today, Europe from the Atlantic to the Urals. The new Commonwealth republics are accepted into the European Helsinki movement. The concern of military personnel near the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Leninsk. The Crimean Autonomous Republic is now called the Republic of the Crimea. The crew of the next international space mission is chosen. Now a 30-minute chronicle of today's events. Today, President Yeltsin met with representatives of parliamentary factions of the Russian parliament. The distribution of forces in the parliament reflects in miniature the political picture in the republic. Changes in the parliament are a barometer of the political life in Russia. Here's how the distribution of forces looks today. The biggest faction is the Agrarian Union with 96 deputies. Then comes the unified faction of Social Democrats and center leftists with 67 deputies. The Free Russia faction, based on the old group Communists for Democracy, has 64 deputies. Democratic Russia and the Industrial Union each have 60 delegates. The Communists of Russia faction has 54 deputies. Sovereignty and Equality Group has 53. The groups called Change, New Policy, and Fatherland each have 50. Further, the unaffiliated deputies, the groups Russia, Workers' Union, and Radical Democrats each have 50. The chairpersons of these factions are members of the Parliament's Council of Factions, which represents different viewpoints. If you compare this situation with that of the beginning of August of last year, the situation has changed significantly. At that time, the Communists of Russia was the biggest faction, followed by Food and Health, which is now called Agrarian Union, and in third place was Democratic Russia. The changes in the parliament are expressed in the changes in political life. Considering the difficulties of the current situation, Boris Yeltsin has decided to re-establish social programs for 2 years. Discussing the preparations for the Russian Congress of People's Deputies, which will begin in April, Yeltsin said he intends to meet with faction leaders 3 times before then to discuss issues of Commonwealth, the Russian Constitution, and economic reform. What will be the goal of this meeting? The main goal is to show how differently we view all these different issues in order to find a solution which will be acceptable for all factions. Late last night, on the proposal of the Armenian President Levon Ter-Petrosyan, the Parliament of the Republic met for an unplanned session to discuss the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh. The session was closed, but we know that the issues discussed by the deputies were those which concern all Armenians. These pictures were shot by Bini Karakanyan from Karabakh. You'll now see how a powerful rocket destroys this building. This is what happens every day, every hour. In the last 3 days, in the capital of Nagorno-Karabakh, 100 people have been killed or wounded. Half of the dead are women and children. This once beautiful city is in ruins. Dozens of buildings are burning. Most alarm is from attacks from Azerbaijani territories and chance attacks on CIS forces and the seizure of modern weapons. Despite the agreement reached yesterday between Armenian and Azerbaijani representatives, the 25-hour ceasefire in Nagorno-Karabakh was violated this morning when fighting resumed. Today, the leaders of the Committee on Security of State Borders appealed to Azerbaijani President Mutalibov, saying that it was necessary to take measures to guarantee the normal work of the border forces. The reason for this was the attack by Armenian armed units on border posts in order to steal steal weapons and military equipment, including this border post in Khudovorin yesterday. 16 firearms were seized there. The Transcaucasian Military District military units are coming under fire, along with the 366th Motor Rifle Company in Stepanakert-Khankendi. Yesterday, 150 rocket shells were fired from Azerbaijan. One soldier was killed and 2 were wounded. The city of Khojaly was attacked yesterday. This is the location of Karabakh's only airport. Azerbaijani special forces seized it on November 17, 1990, and held it until last night. This morning it was taken by Armenian forces. The Tehran news agency says, with quoting Azerbaijani Ministry of Security, that reports that the 366th company participated on the Armenian side in the seizure of the airport. This information is denied by the 4th Army Major General Popov. Last year and in the beginning of this year, about 20 military personnel have been killed in the Transcaucasian area, including 8 in Nagorno-Karabakh. 32 have been wounded there, including most Russians. Armenian President Levon Ter-Petrosyan postponed his trip to the Finnish capital because of increased tensions in Nagorno-Karabakh. Iranian Foreign Minister Ali Akbar Veliati arrived with his mediation mission in Azerbaijan, but was unable to fly to Nagorno-Karabakh today because of the continuing fire of Shusha. The recent reports from Armen press report that at 6:30 p.m. 144 Grad rocket shells were launched on Stepanakert-Khankendi. The city of Askeran is coming under fire from the region of Agdana. More army news. We have received reports from the Baikonur region, which are different from the ones we've been receiving recently. In Leninsk, the military construction brigade has gone on strike. Several hundred participants in the action are taking part. Here are the details. This is a usual sight here. Every launch begins with flames, but 2 days ago at Baikonur, the barracks were burning, set ablaze by soldiers in the construction brigade. These 2,000 soldiers took this measure to protest the inhuman living conditions here. I came here whole, fit, healthy, and now, having served here for 2 years, I'm going home sick. I'm a cripple. Since October of last year, these unwashed and hungry boys have been moving toward the city of Leninsk to present their demands to the commanders. Several hundred broke through cordons by policemen and regular army soldiers, and their demands were met. Medical certification began today of those who ended up in the army by mistake with white draft cards, and the government is paying compensation and feeding the soldiers. However, although criminal proceedings were begun against the arsonists, most of the mutineers were sent home on a short leave. The revolt now is almost over. According to our reports, 4 barracks were burned, 35,000 rubles were stolen, and 17 cars were stolen, which of course did not have any effect on the operations of the space control center at Baikonur. March 17th is the date of the next launch, which is planned here. Their 2 crews, the main and the alternate, were presented today at Star City. Alexander Viktorenko, Alexander Kaleri, Klaus Dietrich Flada, Anatoly Solovyov, Sergei Avdeyev, Reinhold Edvald will take part in the mission to the Mir space station. They will be there 1 week when they will return with Volkov and Krikelyov to Earth. The projects on the Mir space station are now under doubt, but a new player has come onto the scene, the Russian Space Agency, the general director of which is Yuri Koptyov. This agency will allocate government contracts in competitive bidding, including for the Mir space station, and will generally manage Russian space policy. The commander of the crew, Alexander Viktorenko, removed the old flag and seal from his flight suit. The crew flying into space will simply be called a Russian-German crew. Today, in the capital of Finland, there was a signing ceremony for the signing of the final act of the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe by 5 Commonwealth republics. Stanislav Shushkevich, Mircea Snegur, Islam Karimov, Rahman Nabiev, Leonid Kravchuk, all signed the final act of the Conference on Cooperation and Security in Europe. In this way, these countries, which they represent, confirmed their intention to become active participants in the Helsinki process, which is now seriously affecting European affairs and the political life of the continent. For various reasons, the leaders of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan could not come to Helsinki. However, they will sign the final act during the summit meeting of the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe. This will happen in the Finnish capital in July of this year. In terms of the Russian Federation, as the successor state to the former Soviet Union, Russia automatically becomes a participant in the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe. The three Baltic states signed the final act in October of last year. In other